Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. Thank you very much. So for those of you who don't know who I am, and while you find yourself a seat, this is me. I have a Japanese business card. How exciting is that? I'm a radio futurologist, which essentially means that I look at how radio and new platforms work together to augment the listener experience and make radio even more relevant to the next generation. My background is a radio presenter, and that's me, that nice young man in the bottom right-hand corner, looking as if he doesn't quite know what he's doing, wearing a very revolting waistcoat. Top left, for those of you from the UK, you may recognise Chris Moyles, who's a radio presenter. I'm not quite sure what he's doing now, but I got better figures than he did. More recently, I worked for the BBC, working on the BBC iPlayer and making the iPlayer sound better and more reliable. And I also worked on the original Virgin Radio coming out of London, where I looked after the team that put together the website and all of the new media stuff that we ended up doing. And my accountant tells me that I also have to mention Media UK for tax reasons, which is my own little website. So I've done that, so that's all right then. So, I left the BBC in August of last year, and I decided to take a little bit of a break. Firstly, because I thought that I could do with a holiday, but secondly, because I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to find out a little bit more about radio around the other side of the world? Because, actually, if you look at radio and television, there is a big, big difference in how we deal with radio throughout the world and television throughout the world. Here is a television program I'm sure you're all familiar with, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It's shown in over 100 countries. Yesterday I was in Accra in Ghana. They don't call it Who Wants to Be a Millionaire there. They call it Who Wants to Be Rich, which I find moderately amusing. Radio doesn't do any of this, though. It's so much cheaper to make great radio, it makes less sense buying radio programs from abroad. Now, there are a few exceptions. There are some very good network programs which you can get hold of. In the UK, we have Ryan Seacrest on Capital Radio. We have Bob Dylan's theme hour on Radio 2, for example. But mostly, UK radio is made in the UK and listened to in the UK, and that's kind of about it. So, we don't in the UK look beyond our borders, and actually there is no fully international equivalent of the UK's Radio Festival and Radio at the Edge. In fact, this is probably the first time when we've actually had such a collection of European radio people all in one place. So I'm really pleased to be here today, but I reckon there's even more than we can do there, which is why I thought it'd be good to see some radio stations along the way, and maybe we could learn a few things about what they're doing, and hopefully you will too as well. Firstly, though, I'll give you some rules, and the rules are: don't expect anything I show you to be completely relevant for your marketplace and for your audiences. Radio in different countries is very different, but what I hope you'll get from this is some ideas that you can then mash up and use on your own radio stations in your own markets that actually work. Secondly, listen very carefully, because there are literally valuable prizes to be won. Literally valuable prizes to be won. So, here's where I went. I went to a lot of North America and then round to the Far East, so Japan and India and Australia and those types of things. And the first place that I went to is I went from the UK that way. And
welcome to the Voice of America in Kamai.
Chumrip Sur Long Net Lap Titi Metrai, Sai Cheng Piratini, Washington.
Can anybody guess the language, by the way? There is a literally valuable prize for anybody that can guess the language. No? It wasn't English, obviously. It wasn't Danish, but that was a good guess. I can't believe that nobody's going to win the prize, the literally valuable prize. It wasn't. I'm going to stop it now because we don't have much time. That was a bit of VOA Khmer, which is the service for Cambodia that the Voice of America does. Now, the Voice of America broadcasts in 46 different languages, which they say makes it the largest international broadcaster in the world. And I went to see them in Washington, D.C., in their big building next to the Capitol. As you can see, I haven't changed my jacket or my trousers since. In the office that I was in, probably less than 10 people produced 90 minutes of news a day, which is broadcast with a big AM transmitter in Thailand, also relayed on some FM stations in Phnom Penh. And I was introduced to somebody called Sarum. This is Sarum. She's a quiet, smiling Cambodian woman, and she works on the team of VOA Khmer. And I learnt her story. This is her in the 1960s. This is her and her husband. And this is the first of her two daughters. In the mid-1970s, Sarum left her family for a short while to go and study in Paris. But she became so worried that she hadn't heard from her husband and her daughters, she returned to Cambodia to find them. It was 1976, and it was the second year of the rule of the Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot. She never found her husband, and she never found her daughters, and instead she was thrown into a work camp. And later she found out that her husband and her two daughters had been killed during the brutal executions that were going on in the Khmer Rouge there. Now, this is her story in the Khmer language in an audio slideshow on the VOA Khmer website. And I watched this with her sitting next to me. And she was smiling, and she was pointing at her wedding photographs on this slideshow. She was pointing at her husband. She was pointing at her daughters. Now, as a piece of audio, I've no doubt that it was a fantastic listen. But by adding the photographs, by adding the pictures of the people who they were talking about, it was really, really moving experience. Now, I felt a little embarrassed. I actually had to hide the fact that I was having a bit of a cry. So new forms of radio all include a colour screen, a way of adding additional information to the radio experience. Now, VOA Khmer is a long way from adding these to any broadcasts that they do, but their experiments on the internet with what we would call slideshow, I guess, is a powerful reminder of how the simple act of adding static images to radio is so powerful. This isn't crap TV. This is rich, moving radio.
Support for NPR comes from Chase, introducing Ink, the new line of business cards from Chase. Learn more at inkfromchase.com.
This is Weekend Edition from NPR News. I'm Gwen Tompkins, in for Leanne Hansen. President Obama is going to Camp David today, where he'll continue following the progress.
So just around the corner from VOA was NPR. Now, NPR, for those of you who don't know, they carry their programs on 800 radio stations in the US. And NPR radio stations are all commercial free. If you think you just heard a commercial there, you're absolutely wrong. That was an underwriting credit. So that's what that was. Now, a typical NPR station will carry some of NPR's output and produce quite a lot of its own. And WBUR is a good example coming out of Boston if you wanted to have a listen to one. NPR in total has about 12% reach, and it has a load of news, but some entertainment shows as well. Now, I could give you 40 minutes, frankly, on what NPR does. It's very, very clever at quite a lot of the things that it does. Here are a few things that NPR does that I think that we can learn from, particularly if we put together speech radio. Firstly, NPR produces transcripts of all of the interviews which NPR do online. Now, they do this initially by putting it through a speech-to-text program, and then they have a human being to check the result and make sure that it works. And a transcript is normally online within a couple of hours of a program being aired. Now, they put this on the site for a number of really good reasons. Firstly, it makes it easy for Google to find, which means that more people end up going to NPR and reading their content. Secondly, it makes it easier for humans to read as well. So doing transcripts like that is a really, really interesting idea, and I really don't know why more people in Europe don't end up doing that. Certainly in the UK, clearly ends up in more Google juice. And secondly, NPR has an API. Now, an API is a way for computers to access content rather than human beings. This API was produced for NPR's partner radio stations, but it's mostly opened up to everybody. So flexible, content-rich, and it enables anyone to produce anything with NPR content, subject to a couple of licensing terms. And this API goes back to 1995, so you've got quite a wealth of content there, and none of the audio times out either. So what I found really interesting is this API was used to make the first unofficial NPR iPhone app. It was built by a fireman who codes iPhone apps in his spare time to relax. Now, the embarrassing thing was that this NPR app was actually better than the official one that NPR was actually working on. So they made the official one better as a result. This is what the official one looks like. It looks really cool. It looks very clever. But maybe more importantly are the stats. The official NPR iPhone app accounts for 1/3 of all of the traffic to npr.org. That's huge. Secondly, you can see the massive difference in terms of visit durations. For once, I'm not going to read out what it says on a PowerPoint slide, because you're all clever people and you can read. So you can really see that NPR's iPhone app has really changed quite a lot of things. Also in Washington, D.C., by the way, was a pub called the Brixkeller that claims that it has lots of beer. All of the beer that I tried to buy was unfortunately sold out, so that was a bit rubbish. Right, so from the USA up to Canada, there's a bit of audio, so if you're standing there, find yourself a seat. There are plenty up at the back, and enjoy this, particularly enjoy this because this is probably the best opening piece of audio that I've ever heard for a sporting interview. Here we are up to Canada.
Toronto Sports Radio, the Fan 590 and fan590.com.
Here's the general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, Alex Anthopoulos. Good morning, Alex. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Doing well.
Well, tell us about when I say the Kevin Gregg era. I'm not trying to put too much pressure to, but just in the sense we know it's been a lot of quantity right now. We're hoping for quality. You add what is going to be the closer? As far as that goes, how does it shape up now, the hierarchy in your bullpen?
Brilliant opening question. Would anybody like to tell me what sport that was about?
Baseball.
Oh, my goodness me. Who was that? Who are you, sir? Okay. Where are you from?
Belgrade, Serbia.
You've won. Belgrade, Serbia, really? You've won a valuable, literally valuable prize of 1 Ghanaian cedi. That's about 40 euro cents, so many congratulations. Yes, absolutely. Baseball. They're the Toronto Blue Jays Baseball Club. Now, the Fan 590 is quite interesting in business terms, and particularly if you're looking at how you might expand your business. Take a quick look at this, because this is brilliant. Right, so the Fan 590 is owned by a company called Rogers. When I went in, I saw cameras in the studio, and I asked what the cameras were, and apparently part of the breakfast show is also shown on City TV, which is a TV station which is owned by Rogers. And if you want to watch it, you'll find it on the cable system, which is owned by Rogers. Now, the Fan covers the Toronto Blue Jays, as you just heard. They are a baseball club, and they're owned by Rogers. They play in the Rogers Centre, which is owned by Rogers, and after the game you can call the radio station and you can have your say using your Rogers mobile phone, or you can send an email from your Rogers email account on your Rogers internet connection. So it was small wonder that a few blocks away I saw the Rogers School of Management, which I'm going to be signing up to because it seems as if they've really understood how that works. Here's a bit of the public service broadcaster in Canada.
This is CBC Radio 1, 99.1 FM in Toronto. Canada lives here. The world is coming to compete in Vancouver. Many First Nations leaders feel they have a full partnership role in the Olympics. But the Aboriginal community is divided. Some champion the Games as a golden opportunity. Others say it will do nothing to alleviate poverty and racism. The Olympic Divide on The Current with Anna Maria Tremonti from Vancouver. Monday morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Paul Savage.
NATO missiles fired on...
So that's a bit of CBC Radio 1. I played you that clip because they do quite a brave thing, I think. At 8:30 in the morning, their local breakfast sequence stops, right at their peak time, and we have instead a national gritty documentary programme called The Current, which is quite unusual for any radio station that I've heard. It's not the only thing that CBC does. CBC Radio Canada runs 6 national radio services. There's CBC Radio 1, which is kind of Radio 4 meets a bit of Radio 2 meets BBC Local Radio in UK parlance. There's CBC Radio 2, which is lots of different bits of music all chucked together. The CBC Radio 3, which hopefully you went to see Steve Pratt, but I'll talk about CBC Radio 3 in just a second. Then they run 3 channels in French, Premier Chaîne, Espace Musique and Bande à Part. Then the CBC North, Radio Nord Quebec for the Canadian Arctic, and programming is in English, French, 8 Aboriginal languages and a further 7 languages on Radio Canada International. It is actually a really, really large organisation. Some of the programmes it makes are really, really good as well. And what I found interesting is looking around and seeing some of the really clever things that CBC is doing. One obviously brilliantly clever thing that CBC Radio did in Toronto was interview me. What I found really interesting here, and I do look very scared, don't I? What I found very interesting here is, I don't know about you, but when I was a radio presenter, I was interviewing people about things that I really didn't know an awful lot about. And actually, I don't suppose that when a radio presenter starts interviewing Mr. Toyoda from Toyota Cars, that frankly, the presenter knows very much about Toyota cars at all. What they did here is, about 3 days before I went in, they put up on their blog, we're interviewing this bloke who thinks he's a radio futurologist. What should we ask him about the future of radio? And lots of experts actually went on to the CBC website and gave a ton of interesting questions to the host. I thought that crowdsourcing the interview questions was actually really interesting, and it undoubtedly made that programme sound a little bit better because there were some really good pieces of really good questions that Nora here was able to end up asking. Here's something else which I think is a bit weird, certainly coming from Europe. This is Lana Gay on the air on CBC Radio 3. But just take a look at the amount of clocks which are in this studio. This is, at the same time, going out live, the mid-afternoon drive time evening show. Quite how you make your programming relevant to people who are in the middle of their working day and way past their working day is a real testament to some of the skills of the programmers of that particular station. Here's a clip of CBC Radio 3.
This is the R330 counting down the top songs on CBC Radio 3 with your host, Craig Norris.
Well, you can call the Jingle-matic a lot of things, but you can't call it a liar, because this is the R330, the most popular music here on CBCRadio3.com and Sirius 86, all in one place. My name, well, I'm Craig Norris. Pedro Mendez is my on-air producer.
Whoop, whoop! As the audio producer says, whoop, whoop. CBC Radio 3 is actually really pretty cool. If you didn't go and see Steve talk in the previous session, CBC plays only unsigned music. So very similar to Amazing Radio in the UK, kind of half similar to what Radar is doing in Australia. It means they've got no music rights issues, so their podcasts play songs in full, and their website contains every single song that they play on demand in full as well, which is really cool. And what you can do is you can end up sharing playlists, sharing the kind of music that you like with other people. All brand new Canadian artists. Really nice. The nicest thing if you're a techie about this particular website is you notice it doesn't have one of those annoying pop-up windows that start playing you the audio. In fact, the audio is right there at the top. We're now playing Kate Mackey and Upon a Time. Yet I can still click on any of the links in this page and it'll carry on playing. even though this player is in the middle of the page. It's a very clever piece of technology that they've been working on to make that work. It's very clever. View the source if you want to find out how they do it. It's really, really cool. The beer in Toronto is quite good as well, obviously. Tank House Ale I would recommend. It's an amber ale. It's very tasty and very nice. Right, next I went down to San Francisco. I didn't see a radio station there, but I did meet a few people, my friends at Arbitron, but also I met Radio Weave, and Radio Weave is quite interesting. Yes, it's another iPhone app. How many iPhone apps have we seen today? Yeah, sorry about that. But this is actually quite fun. It's an iPhone app, but it's also a website as well. I'll show you the website because it makes it a little bit simpler. What it does is it weaves bits of content together and makes your very own radio station out of this. So some of this content is from radio, some of it is from online content providers, some of it's from Twitter and turned into speech. It doesn't look awfully brilliant yet, but it actually does sound really quite decent. Loads of bits of content thrown together. So wouldn't it be interesting if you could make a radio weave from your network of radio stations? From things on your radio stations that you can actually then cut up and reuse in this kind of way. Why is it that we actually think about radio shows as being 3-hour-long programs, not 3-minute-long pieces of really nice, succinct content? Why aren't we doing something smart and clever like this?
And a very good morning and a Happy New Year from Tokyo in Japan. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and what Japanese like to do is not necessarily see in the New Year in style on midnight, but see in the New Year by watching the sun coming up, the first sun of 2010. So I'm at the Hananzono Jinja Shrine in the Shinjuku area of Tokyo, and there is a massive queue already trying to get into the shrine. There's also quite a lot of food stalls which are open. Clearly there are an awful lot of people here who've made a trek very early in the morning, so looks to be some very exciting food over there. There's a Suzu Yakisoba, which looks nice, and there's a chicken basket, which looks even more marvellous.
That's a quick example of why I'm not on the radio anymore. That was a little audio boo, by the way, in case you were wondering how I ended up recording that. Japan is just really, really weird. One of the things that I thought I better not do is show you lots of holiday photographs, but well, stuff it. It's the end of the day. This is the Emperor's Palace. It's very nice. This is the loo in my hotel room. It's got a button there for boys and a button there for girls. I tried both. I couldn't work out the difference. This is a vending machine. From a vending machine you can get cold drinks and also hot drinks as well, including this, which is sweet corn soup in a can. Delicious. But really, Japan is it's completely weird. Everything is different in Japan. The mains voltage is different. They use 100 volts, unlike anywhere else in the world. The size of television screen is actually different. They do even the ratio is different. They do some really, really weird things in Japan. A particularly not weird thing in Japan, here, I've just realised that there's probably a Japanese person here, so I should be probably... It's brilliant, by the way. This is a portable radio, which just happens to have a television on it. I thought important just to show you this. This is about 200 quid, I think. I thought important to show you this because, yes, it's got TV on it. Yes, it's got FM on it, but it's still got AM on it. AM seems to be still very important. It's difficult to put into small electronics, but yet the Japanese are still doing it. So I thought that was really interesting. Here's another slightly cheaper radio. This is £28. And it's a nice small little Sony. But you might have noticed that, oh no, broadcast standards, no. FM in Japan starts at 76 and goes all the way up to 108. So when you tune into 80 megahertz on your FM dial in Japan, you get this.
Tokyo FM 80 Love.
That well-known frequency of 80 Love. Tokyo FM was very interesting to actually go to and have a look around. Here are three interesting things that Tokyo FM are doing. Firstly, this is a website of Tokyo FM's called School of Lock. I assumed when they said School of Lock, I wrote down School of Rock, and I said, oh, brilliant, School of Rock. And they said, no, School of Lock. So Japanese have sense of humour shock. School of Lock is a program. School of Lock is a program which goes out quite late at night, and it's a peculiar idea for Europeans in that it essentially has quite a lot of big names who come in and do lectures on things like the new Britney Spears song. And those types of things. It's a very peculiar program, but what I found really interesting about it is that this website contains a massive, great community of those School of Lock listeners. So not just are they getting a lot of people tuning in late at night to this particular program, they have 130,000 people who are signed up to this and are therefore really immersing themselves in this particular brand right through the day. Which I found really interesting and also quite forward-looking in terms of some of the Japanese stations. I was also told, by the way, by another Japanese person that radio, well, that's for the old people. So this is actually quite nice, seeing that radio isn't. Here's another thing. This is the Tokyo FM iPhone app, and as you can see, there's some now playing information on there. The name of this particular program is Wonderful World, and that's the presenter that you can see there. Now, why am I showing you another iPhone app? This is clever because actually Tokyo FM can't stream their radio stations online. They don't have the music rights to end up doing that. But they really wanted to make their radio station available on the iPhone, because listening to FM is quite difficult in Tokyo with all of those tall buildings. So what they did is they looked into this and they worked out, right, if we can't stream online, but we've got an iPhone, how are we going to do it? So they spoke to the music rights people, and they came up with this brilliant plan. This phone knows where you are. So when you're in Tokyo, it goes, I'm in Tokyo, and then picks up an online stream. If you're outside of Tokyo, then you don't get it, because it knows that you shouldn't be able to pick that radio station up. I thought it was a really clever way of getting past a bit of a hurdle in terms of making them available on new technology. They're also, of course, available on radios as well. This is a mobile phone, a Ketai, tuned into 80 megahertz. And again, there's more information on here, more information on the screen. That may be now playing information. It may be something else completely entirely. They also put advertising on there too. And I think, isn't it interesting if you look at delivering audio through something easy, straightforward like FM, but delivering additional information through IP. This particular thing is very tied up with the mobile phone network, but if you do want to find out a little bit more about that, do go and have a look at a piece of technology called radiodns.org, which I'm not here to talk about, but I am involved with. So radiodns.org, it's very good. The other thing about Tokyo FM is that the now playing information, who really likes doing their music returns to the collection agencies, to the music collection agencies? We love doing them, don't we? What they've done here is they've actually linked up the now playing information straight to their equivalent of PPL or PRS, the music rights holders. And because the music rights holders then get live information about what this radio station is playing, they give them some money off, which is even more interesting. So quite nice, some of the things that Tokyo FM are doing. This is some nice IPA in Tokyo. This is some nice wheat beer called Hitachino Nest White Ale. So that's nice. I then went to South Korea. This is me standing on the South Korea-North Korea border. What a bizarre place. That's a North Korean border guard through my zoom lens. Very bizarre. And here is a whacking great big gun going off in Hong Kong. Brilliant. That was fun, wasn't it? Right. What I was excited about in Hong Kong is the first thing I did is I went to the pub, obviously, and picked up one of the free newspapers, and I thought, brilliant, look at this. New DAB star, Starry Lee, has done it again. And I thought, this is great. They've got DAB and everything. This is fantastic. Then I discovered that DAB actually stands for the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong. And it turns out that Starry is, in fact, a politician, which is no fun at all. Having said that, I had a quick look at what radio stations were available in the paper, and then I thought, well, that's interesting, but I wonder if people are doing something else as well. You see, the interesting thing about Hong Kong, this is a bit techie, so I'll give you something to watch. The interesting thing about radio in Hong Kong is if you need to cover all of Hong Kong, which is about 9 million people, you need to put up 7 FM transmitters, which of course, as you'll know, means you need 7 FM frequencies. So all of a sudden, to add another radio station means a lot of frequency use and a lot of transmitters. And the Chinese wouldn't mind some of those frequencies for themselves on the mainland. So something like DRM or DAB is very interesting because single frequency networks mean that you can still use those 7 transmitter masts to cover the area, but you don't have to use those 7 frequencies, which is really good. So it came as no particular surprise to find out when I got into my hotel room, which is at the end of this video, but I'm going to save you that. I got into my hotel room to turn on my DAB radio, and what did I find but some DAB radio stations? So I thought, brilliant. Made a couple of phone calls, thanks to World DMB, and discovered that they were based round the corner. And it was a nice man called Simon who was running quite a lot of these DAB radio stations. So I went in and I said, Simon, I've been listening and I've really enjoyed some of these radio stations. Your oldest station is particularly good. Where are you getting all of this programming from? And he said, well, the first thing is it's a test. So we're just doing it to test the coverage of DAB. We only have 2 masts up at the moment, so we're just doing it just to test the coverage. And I said, oh, well, that's very interesting, but where are you getting the programs from? And he laughed and he pointed to the other end of the table. There are his 7 radio stations going out. So don't bother with any of this RTS nonsense. That's what they end up using. Rather wonderful iPods. I like the way that they've actually chosen a different colour for each radio station. I found that quite nice. Oh, and by the way, they do actually take these iPods out every other day and refresh the music in there, so you don't just hear the same songs going round and round and round. Heads of music in here. So that was interesting, but the other interesting thing about what they're doing is, of course, we're all very familiar, aren't we, with some of the inherent problems that a new platform has. We can't start really earning money from this if people don't have the receivers. And if people don't have the receivers, then the radio stations can't start earning money out of this. It's a vicious circle. It goes around and round. And if the radio stations aren't earning money out of it, then the radio stations can't really provide as much excellent content as we need them to, because there aren't enough receivers and blah, blah, blah. So the interesting thing that they're doing in Hong Kong is that they're giving away car radios to taxis and to all of the small buses in the territory. They're also giving away 500,000 of these, 500,000 to anybody who wants one, so that they can then go to the advertisers and say, look at that, we've got 1.5 million people tuning into DAB. This is why you should be advertising on us. And I thought that was a really interesting way of marketing and of breaking that deadlock when it comes to a new platform. So 10 minutes left. Let me firstly tell you, Hong Kong, Qingdao. Good. Right. Now, here's a familiar logo.
Now, here comes the music. 95.5 Virgin Hits.
After 7 years of working for a Virgin company, it was really, really weird to go into another Virgin Radio building and see all of the Virgin branding up there. Virgin is interesting. Virgin broadcasts in the Thai language, but it uses Western music. So one of the interesting things that they do, therefore, on their website is that they translate songs from English into Thai. So they actually explain what the songs are all about, which I thought was A, very interesting, and B, apparently it gives them a load of additional traffic as well. So they can actually explain all of the lyrics of particular songs. Next door to Virgin's studio was the studio for another one of their radio stations, so I'm fairly convinced to have used Westlife or Boyzone to make their music jingles, but still, here we go. Now, what Easy does is something quite interesting. They allow their audiences to chat directly with their presenters through the website. And it's resulted, they told me, in people coming back every single day to the website, really adding additional traffic and audience to the radio station. And on both of these station websites, both Easy and Virgin, both run by the same company, one of the most popular things that they do is charts. Just like the rest of us, I haven't been in a radio market where charts aren't really important on a radio station site. It's a really great way of adding more traffic to your radio station site. This is the premium beer in Thailand. It looks like it's German. It isn't. It looks like it tastes nice. It doesn't.
You've got the line.
Oh, God.
Come on.
Music.
What?
Music.
So we've got the biggest stars.
And the biggest prizes.
Should we let Jeff say something?
We'll give him 1 second. Time's up. Roll the music.
So radio in Australia is really different. If we can have a little bit more volume, let me play you, because radio people are all deaf, by the way. Let me play you Sydney's Today FM. This is Kyle and Jackie O. This is a feature called Take It From the Rear.
Jill has rung through on 131060. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Morning, Jackie.
Hey, you've got this sentence here. I'm going to read it backwards, and then you got to say it the right way around. You can't leave out any words, and they cannot be jumbled in the wrong order.
Yeah, you ready?
Okay. Awards Brit at out. Hang cheek ask her let's Gaga lady.
Lady Gaga lets her cheek hang out at the Brit Awards.
Oh, you were close.
Yeah,
Let's
you
her
missed out
ass cheek.
Missed out ass cheek.
That word again, by the way, arse cheek. Radio is really edgy and fun in Australia in a way that maybe it's not allowed to be in parts of the UK, parts of North America anymore. I had 2 takeaways from Australian commercial radio. Firstly, their programs are full of content. Secondly, so are their websites as well. So every stunt they do on air has an online component to it. They film everything they do. They put it all up on the website. It's really, really impressive how much use Australian radio stations make of their talent while they're on the air. Secondly, they're really experimenting with new platforms, new ways of delivering content. In Australia, DAB Plus is the thing that they're getting really excited about. This is Radar, which is Austereo's new music station. It's commercial free. It's just sponsored because you can kind of do that if you keep your costs down very low. Jelly, you're very familiar with, I'm sure. A radio station where you choose the music you play and you can vote it off real time as well. They're playing with that on DAB. The ABC has also run special DAB stations in Australia as well for arts festivals, for the moon landing, and those are radio stations that literally exist for 3-4 days and then go away again. Really interesting ways of talking about additional content for additional platforms. SBS is doing something similar too. Now, I've written a lot more about this on the blog, and given that I have 3 minutes left, I'm not going to talk too much more about that. It is worthwhile mentioning, though, that all of their radio stations are also running images on DAB. So this is the #1 radio station in Sydney, 2GB. Which, as you can tell, is Sydney's #1. You can also see, now playing information from a classic hit station here. and very useful for markets that still rely on people's memories, people's diaries, to work out what radio stations they listen to. Here's ABC Radio National with a really clear logo there as well. So very, very interesting. One other thing, if you were here for the previous session around radio advertising, Commercial Radio Australia has made sure that their advertisers don't now just send audio to radio stations, but they also send these images as well, and where to click images through to if you happen to be online. So the Australians are even planning a new era of radio advertising too. Really well worth watching. Why aren't we doing that here in Europe? Finally, Red Oak, by the way, very good in Sydney. Finally, to India.
तेरा कसूर न मेरा कसूर न तूने सिग्नल देखा न मैंने सिग्नल देखा एक्सीडेंट हो गया रब्बा रब्बा बड़ा टेंट हो गया रब्बा रब्बा मिर्ची सुनने वाले ऑलवेज खुश
Yes, Radio Mirchi is a radio station for Bollywood tunes, if you hadn't already guessed. India is a really fascinating place. It's incredibly backward, but incredibly forward in many different ways. Mobile phones in India, hugely important. Very, very few people have great big laptops and desktops in India. So Radio Mirchi is always focused on what the mobile phone can do for their audiences. I think the mobile is really interesting in places like India, particularly when you marry those benefits of radio and the internet together in a phone, which it's perfect for. So India may be some of the places that we see some of those innovations first. It's also really interesting seeing how Indian radio stations market themselves as well. So in the last 60 seconds, my top three, that is not a top three beer, I don't recommend it. It's not very nice. My top three then, of the things that I learned during my 6 weeks abroad was, firstly, just take a look at the amount of innovation which is going on in Australia with their new platforms, with what they do, with what they do on online and on DAB+ and other things as well. What can we be trying here? Can we actually change some of the ways that we work radio to produce little temporary radio stations and all that kind of things? Transcripts and APIs. Transcripts are just so simple, but I find it really weird that we tend not to do transcripts of radio interviews, whether it's an interview with a music star or a news interview. So where are ours there? Where are our APIs to allow other people to build on the amount of content, just like Twitter has? And finally, images. You've seen some of the powerful images, both out of Australia, where they will be turning that into a really good additional new revenue stream, but also the really powerful things that you can do with images in terms of the Voice of America stuff. There's really, really interesting things that I think that we can all work on, because if we work together on this, then we can actually end up keeping radio relevant to the new generation which is tuning into radio right now. Cheers for your time, and thank you.